So a few of you guys yesterday said you wanted to hear the whole story about the hospital and the diagnosis when my daughter had a scary sudden diagnosis of type 1 diabetes. The symptoms leading up to it are in my video from last night, and then I'm gonna start from there. So it was my husband's 10-year anniversary with me. Well, it was the day after. So we had a room booked. We were planning on going out for a nice dinner and staying away. And when she woke up at 5 that morning, she was throwing up. And it was the day that Hocus Pocus was released at 5 a.m. So we went downstairs and we were watching Hocus Pocus. And she was so excited about it, but like went right back to sleep. So I was like, the majority of the morning, she would sleep and then she would wake up, use the bathroom, chug water, and go back to sleep. So finally I was like, we're going to the hospital. And our hospital is like 2 hours away on the other side of this bridge. And it was a hurricane that day. So we're like in between Maryland and Virginia Beach. So we were trying to figure out which way to go. And we knew that the best children's hospital was across the bay. And so it is like pouring rain, flooding. It was terrible. My mom come to the house for the little ones. And I remember her being like, I don't know if you should go to Norfolk. It floods really bad there. Might not be a good idea. Like maybe you should wait until tomorrow. And I was like, Mom, we got to take her. Something is wrong. Like, I don't know what's going on with her, but this is not right. I'm going to try this on my cheeks. I've never tried it. So we have to cross like a 17-mile bridge to go to this hospital. So we get to the bridge and my husband calls. Actually, he used to work there for like 13 years. So he calls one of the guys there and they're like, we're only letting over certain vehicles right now. So he explains what's going on. He's like, I've got to get over the bridge. Meanwhile, my pediatrician calls me back and was like, listen to me. If you can't get over the bridge, I want you to turn around and I want you to go to Maryland, which would have been 3 hours the opposite way. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. We finally get on the bridge and there is like waves crashing over the bridge like this. Like it was so scary. At this point, she is completely like asleep in the back seat and like hunched over. And every time we tried to ask her a question, it was really hard to like get her to respond. And then all of a sudden she started with this really deep labored breathing, which is apparently what they do when they're in diabetic ketoacidosis. So she was like, and we were like, what in the world? Because up until then, like none of her symptoms were respiratory. So we were like, what is going on? I just remember looking at my husband and he was driving. We both just looked at each other and we didn't say a word, but the same thought was in our mind. And I think for sure we both were thinking they were going to tell us like she had cancer. It was very scary. So we get to the city of Norfolk and the roads are just flooded everywhere. I'm talking water's going like this over people's windshields and we cannot get to the hospital. Husband went 3 different ways and was like, oh my gosh, like this way's blocked off. We can't go this way. And I started panicking. I'm like, what are we doing? And Raylan remembers a little bit about this because every time we go over there, she's like, Mom, remember when the roads were flooded over here and you were freaking out? I'm like, yeah, I remember. This is like right in the middle of the city. And my husband was like, hold on, I know one more way before we start panicking. And I was like, why don't you just pull over at this gas station? We'll just park the car and we'll throw her over your shoulder and we'll just run there. Like that's where I was at with it. So he finally gets us into the parking garage. And right before we had left, I had asked him to grab my purse. He grabbed my purse, but evidently my wallet fell out. So neither one of us had an ID, a wallet, a debit card, like nothing on us. And I'm like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? He's like, they're gonna have to take us. She at this point was completely hunched over his shoulder, unconscious. She was still breathing, but she was not responsive. And that's how quick it happened. Walk into the waiting room and I remember it like yesterday, there was a whole bunch of people in there just waiting. I walked up to the desk and she obviously took one look at Raylan and knew something was wrong. And all I said was, my daughter's throwing up and she's lost 8 pounds. The doors opened straight to the emergency room. And when we were walking back, Raylan was hunched over my husband's shoulders. And it was like something off of TV. People were like, whoosh. It was doctors, nurses everywhere. And I remember them saying, she's in DKA, she's in DKA. Oh, right before this, we were in the triage. And the triage nurse went to go put the pulse ox on her. And I was like, are her fingernails turning blue? And she went, I was just looking at the same thing. So anyways, they were like this and they were like, she's in DKA, she's in DKA. Me and my husband were like, what is DKA? They hadn't even laid her down on the bed yet. She was still on Matt's shoulder. The doctor's like, sir, we have to run some tests, but I'm pretty sure she's a type 1 diabetic. This has turned into a really long video, so I'm going to do video 2 and I'm going to have Raylan in it, and she's going to kind of tell you guys also about the little bits and pieces that she remembers.